Does the president think that trade wars are easy to win? Is that still his view?
I think the president feels like if he is in charge of those negotiations, absolutely. He's the best negotiator at the table, and we certainly have full confidence in his ability to help move things forward. I think if you look simply at the Chorus deal, in which the president was able to get a much better deal for the United States, we've made great progress on NAFTA, and we're hoping to have great progress on the trade negotiations with China.
And Sarah, if I can ask you to clarify something he said in his remarks in West Virginia. The president said yesterday it came out where this journey coming up, women are raped at levels that nobody has ever seen before. What was he talking about?
It's not.
What came out yesterday that these women
There
were
was a
being
story,
raped?
I believe it was the LA Times, I don't have it here in front of me, that documented some of that, but there's also, this is a well-documented fact that a lot of the people, I believe up to 80% in recent years of women that are making that journey have been raped in that process. The president saying that's simply unacceptable, and this is something that should be looked at.
80% of the women coming across the border are raped?
No, he's saying that the drug smugglers, the traffickers, the coyotes, this is something that, again, has been in recent years. I know it's been up to as high as 80%.
Thanks, Sarah. On the sanctions, why hasn't the president spoken out personally about the sanctions and the behavior enumerated by the administration today? By
The president
Russia?
has. It's ridiculous that you guys say that. Just earlier this week, the president stood on a stage in an open press room and talked about how he had been tough on Russia. And he's continued to do that through action. And we've continued to do that through a number of administration officials. But to say that the president hasn't addressed it directly, he did that while standing on stage with the leaders of the Baltic countries in front of, I believe, almost every single one of you earlier this week. So that's just not a fair or accurate statement.
On these sanctions imposed today, he's not spoken out, and there's been no statement issued under his name. And he's not spoken out specifically about the issues enumerated by the administration. He hasn't condemned the alleged subversion of Western democracies, the activity in Syria, a number of things, cyber crimes, all the things that your administration has outlined. He himself has not spoken out against those. He's just said he's been tough on Russia.
No, we speak on behalf of the president day in, day out. Again, the president has signed off and directed these actions. I think that speaks volumes, actually, on how the president feels and exactly underscores what he said earlier this week when he said no one has been tougher on Russia. Katie?
Yeah, just a question about the president's stance on Scott Pruitt, keeping his post at the EPA. Has he been advised, by anyone close to him that Pruitt should step down? Where does the president stand?
This is no one other than the president has the authority to hire and fire members of his cabinet. It's a decision that he'll make, and right now I don't have any personnel announcements. The president feels that the administrator has done a good job at EPA. He's restored it back to its original purpose of protecting the environment. It's gotten unnecessary regulations out of the way, and we're continuing to review any of the concerns that we have, and I'll keep you posted if there's anything further on that front. Sorry guys, I can't hear if you're all talking at one time. Hey guys, let's be respectful. I'll call on you one at a time. Go ahead, Katie.
If everything that has been reported about Mr. Pruitt ends up being true in the president's estimation, security detail, the $50 a day law
I'm not going
department,
to walk
is that
through
going to be enough?
hypotheticals until we have time to go through a full review. That's what we're doing right now. But again, the president thinks that he's done a good job on the purpose of carrying out the goals of the EPA.
Sarah.
Thank you. Sarah, I was wondering if you could kind of speak to, there seems to be a perception that at times the president makes announcements and then the White House has to come up with policy to match what the president said, like with the talk about the military at the border. There weren't really a lot of details about that at first. And with the issue with Syria, him saying he wanted to kind of pull all the troops back. Can you talk anything about like that perception and what's going on there?
Well, I think that's a perception of completely people that don't understand, I guess, how civics works. The only person elected to make those decisions and actually outline what policy should look like is the president. So when he makes an announcement, he's the only one that has the authority to do so. He's carrying out the duties that he was elected to do, and it's up to his staff to implement those policies that he announces or that he makes. So it's He's doing exactly what the American people asked him to do, and that's to come here and change Washington, and he's doing that every single day. John?
Two questions on China. First of all, what was it that prompted the president last night to come out with a statement that he is threatening tariffs on another $100 billion in Chinese goods? Since none of these tariffs have taken effect, what was the purpose of upping the ante, if you will?
The United States is responding to Chinese actions that have gone on for decades. The Chinese have engaged in unfair and illegal trade practices for many years, and this is simply a response to that. We would like to see them change and make significant changes to the trade back and forth that we have with them, and that's the purpose.
But what was it that prompted the escalation? He had already announced $60 billion worth of goods targeted for tariffs, and then he upped it to another $100 billion on top of that last night.
The president is going to actually do something and be tough when no one else has been willing to do this. Look, China created this problem, and the president is trying to put pressure on them to fix it and to take back some of the terrible actions that they've had over the last several decades.
Second question, a few minutes ago on CNBC, Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, said, well, it's not intended to, this could ignite a trade war. How concerned is the president that this could tip the balance into a trade war? Because the stock market took a look at that statement, didn't like it at all.
We are, again, this is something that China has created, and President Trump is trying to fix it. And we are moving forward in that process of we're going to continue putting pressure on China to stop in the illegal and unfair trade practices that they've continued in for decades.
Is he willing to fight a trade war on this?
We don't want it to come to that. The president wants us to move to a process of fairness, to free and fair and open trade, and that's what he's trying to do.
Sarah, the Dow is down about 500 points the last time I looked. Does that give the president any pause as he pursues these actions?
We know that there could be some fluctuation, but at the same time, the president has said enough is enough. China has to change this illegal and unfair practice that they've been in, and the president is the first time, frankly, we shouldn't be in this situation. Previous administration should have stepped up and tried to stop these actions long before today, but thankfully we have a president that's willing to actually stand up, be tough, and take some really courageous and bold action like President Trump has done.
Sarah, the next step, what is the next step? What do you want to see happen now? Do you want the Chinese to come forward and ask for talks and negotiate, or what do you want to see happen?
We certainly want to be able to negotiate. We want them to stop participating in unfair and illegal trade practices, intellectual property theft being a huge detriment to United States companies and businesses. John?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Just following up on Steve's question regarding the stock market, the Dow is down nearly 4,000 points since January the 26th. Does the administration believe that any of that decline is attributable to any of the president's actions concerning the tariffs that the president has announced on steel and aluminum, perhaps the tariffs the president intends to impose upon China, anything related to what the administration has done since that time period?
We're focused on the long-term economic principles. Let's be clear, the tariffs that we're talking about with China have not been implemented and are months away. The president has cleared the way for a strong economic environment through the tax cuts, through deregulation. We're going to continue pushing forward on long-term economic principles, but at the same time, we're not going to allow a country like China to continue to have these unfair and illegal trade practices.
I understand that, but just to getting back to my question, any actions that the president has taken since January the 26th, since that period in which the Dow has declined almost 4,000 points, anything that he's done or said do you think is attributable to that stock market decline?
The actions of the president have certainly strengthened our economy. We've created almost 3 million new jobs. We've gotten regulation out of the way. We've provided tax cuts for American individuals and companies. Again, we're focused on the long-term economic principles, and we feel very confident in where we are.
What is the administration doing with the issue of faxing and the issues of emails? Administrations before this were dealing with the fact that the post office was losing money because of the internet, because of social media, because of people being able to correspond versus using a stamp or metered mail. how is the administration targeting that versus going to Amazon and looking at them as the problem?
Look, we're doing, as I said a few minutes ago, we're working with the post office. We're doing a thorough review and looking at the best ways to modernize that. I don't have any specific policy announcements on that front, but that's something that we're in ongoing conversations with the U.S. Postal Service on.
Amazon contract,
Thanks so much, guys. Hope you have a great Friday.
Why does the president still say millions and millions of people voted twice when it's not true?